Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lincoln Lancaster County Planning Commission of April 2nd, 2025. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, are available online or at the Planning Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and the staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of today's meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. The Planning Commission action on all of today's items is a recommendation to the City Council or the County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held March 19th, 2025.
So moved, Campbell.
Second, Joy.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Abstain.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Veit,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman, yes.
Yes.
Minutes approved, 8-0.
We will now proceed with today's agenda. The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will now ask Shelley to read all the consent agenda items into the record, and once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Shelley, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
Just have the one item, item 1.1, change of zone 25006 to change the zone from AGR agricultural residential to R1 residential for one lot on property generally located at 6620 Elmira Lane. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this item?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting this site to be disclosed?
Also no.
If there is anyone wishing to speak on this consent agenda item, please stand.
All right, we do not see anyone here that would like to speak on the consent agenda item, so we would now entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I would move to approve change of zone 25006.
Second, Joy.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Veit,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman, Yost.
Yes.
Approved 9-0.
We will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and/or included as a part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak, unless additional time is requested and granted. The clerk will use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. The lights will appear on the monitors provided. The clerk will indicate when you have 1 minute remaining to wrap up your testimony. The red light will indicate that your 5 minutes have expired, and once the final minute has elapsed, the clerk will indicate that your time is up. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the Commission votes to defer action or to continue the public hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
Item 4.1, text amendment 24015 to amend the Lincoln Municipal Code to amend 27.02.070F to add a new definition for floor area for accessory buildings, amend 27.02.040C and 27.02.190R to clarify the definitions for club, recreational facilities, outdoor, and recreational facilities, enclosed commercial, and revise both 27.63.500 salvage yards and 27.69.035 off-premise signs to update references to Nebraska Highway 2 and include Nebraska Parkway. Are there any expert communications to be disclosed on this application?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
Also no.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Jacob Schlange with the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. Today, I'm just going to run you briefly through the 3 different items that are packaged together in this text amendment. So there is one new definition that's being proposed, as well as some modifications to some existing definitions, and then kind of a text cleanup related to the name change from Nebraska Highway 2 to Nebraska Parkway. So first is adding a new definition for floor area for accessory buildings. Essentially what we have here is that the table 27.72.120D in the ordinance regulates the maximum allowable size of floor area for accessory buildings. Because there is another definition in the ordinance for floor area, which specifically excludes space that is designated for storage of automobiles. Essentially, it's been argued that that table doesn't include any spaces used to store automobiles, so garages. That's not historically how the definition for accessory buildings has been interpreted, so this is basically just to update with a new definition that allows us to interpret that table the way that it has always historically been interpreted. So that's the first item. The second is updates to definitions for club, recreational facility, enclosed commercial, and recreational facility outdoor. The reason for updating these definitions is to differentiate between these 3 definitions and the definition for academy. Essentially what has occurred a couple of different times now is that facilities that are really intended for education on a specific skill, in these cases, athletics academies, so that might be gymnastics or some kind of other sport, have been able to designate themselves as a club in order to avoid the requirement for a special permit for academies if they're located in an I-1 industrial district. That special permit would require that they have safety plans for evacuation and in the event of things like chemical spills. So for the purpose of health and safety related to these academies, we wanted to clean up the definition of club so that that was not able to happen anymore. In doing so, we identified that there are a number of special permits for clubs that are describing things that would probably more accurately fit the definition for recreational facilities, both outdoor and indoor. As a result of that, we took a closer look at those definitions and determined that the existing definition for recreational facilities enclosed commercial, because it includes that language about commercial, really limits things like a YMCA that might be operating for not for profit because it's not necessarily a commercial facility. So cleaning up that definition to say recreational facility indoor, and providing some clarification on what the difference between an indoor and outdoor recreational facility is, noting that there can be accessory uses for each of those. As a result of these changes, there are a few facilities in Lincoln that are currently designated as clubs with their existing special permit that would be reclassified as either recreational facility indoor or recreational facility outdoor. A couple of examples of these would be the Cooper YMCA is currently classified as a club. That would become an indoor recreational facility. The Boys and Girl Scouts facilities are both currently classified as clubs. Part of the definition change in outdoor recreation facilities would allow them to classify as an outdoor recreation facility. And there's a few other examples as well. But essentially, that change in categorization does not change the way that any of these facilities operate. It's just changing the way that we're classifying them. And if they are a use that would not currently be permitted under the zoning classifications, they would still be grandfathered and to continue operating as they are. We sent out some notices to these facilities that we were able to identify back in January, inviting them to reach out and meet with me if they wanted more information. I did meet with the Boy Scouts of America as a result of that outreach. And once I explained the reason behind it, they were supportive of the change. The final definition change is just an update to the text around salvage yards and around off-premise signs. Essentially, these two don't make any reference to Nebraska Parkway, despite the fact that the name has been changed from Nebraska Highway 2 to Nebraska Parkway. The reason you see we've left Nebraska Highway 2 on this list is because there is still a portion of Nebraska Highway 2 that is within the the ETJ within the city of Lincoln. So for the purposes of our zoning ordinances, it's important to leave Nebraska Highway 2 there, but also to add Nebraska Parkway. So hopefully that addresses everything. I'm happy to answer any questions about these.
Yes, Dick.
Just thinking on the top of my head, the Genesis clubs that are at 70th and A, and it's just off of Old Cheney and 56th.
Yeah.
Are they zoned for commercial then, or?
So I believe, I don't know those specifically, but I believe that those are in commercial districts. So that wouldn't necessarily be a concern with the industrial
Right.
that we're dealing with. If it's a permitted use already, then they would be allowed
They'd
to
be
continue
fine.
operating. That wouldn't be affected, yeah.
Okay.
I do know, I can speak to both of those not being on the list of special permits for clubs.
So
I do know that.
basically, the clubs have been mostly nonprofits that are in the city.
That's right. In the case of ones that are being reclassified as indoor recreation facilities, I think it really is just the Cooper YMCA, and then Madonna Rehabilitation Center has a recreation center there as well, and they had a special permit for a club for that facility as well.
Okay. Thank you.
You commented that there would be no negative impact, mostly through grandfather. If any of these facilities were to apply today to do what they're going to do under the new designation, would they not be able to do something or be otherwise restricted?
That's a good question. It would vary slightly depending on the facility. For many of these, it would require a special permit, but we're essentially saying you don't need to go through the process of applying for the special permit because you already are operating in this way and it's a pre-existing
Grandfather.
use.
Mhm.
There might be one or two instances where their use would not be allowed, but I can't speak to the specific list of all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, Bailey?
Another curiosity question. Things like Let's Pickle and like people who have indoor courts connected to food or bar, is that under this or is that a completely different section of?
That's a good question. I believe those would be considered accessory to the restaurant or bar use that is the primary use.
Thank you.
I just a question on the new definition for floor area for accessory buildings. I'm reading it as that's the total allowed floor area for all like combined accessory.
That's correct. So it would be for all combined accessory buildings and uses on the property. So that includes a garage if it is attached. That includes any sheds that would be on the property. That table, I should specify, is specifically for residential districts. So it only applies to the R1 through R8 and then to AG and AGR districts. All right.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone here who wishes to testify on this application? Support or in opposition?
I would move that we close the public hearing,
Second, Joy?
and I would move that we approve text amendment 2401.
Hey, Dick, we have to first vote to close.
Sorry.
Okay. This
Just
is
jumping ahead.
this is to close public hearing. Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
And then I would move to approve text amendment 24015.
Second, Joy?
All right, discussion.
This is just a good cleanup, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
Anyone else? All right.
Okay, Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved 9-0. Next item, 4.2, change of zone 24022 to designate approximately 22 properties on part of the South Haymarket Industrial Local Landmark District, roughly bounded by South 7th Street, South 9th Street, J Street, and N Street. More information on this proposed district and affected properties can be found at lincoln.ne.gov/historic. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
Hello. My name is Jill Dahlberg, and I am the fairly new historic preservation planner with the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. However, I've been in the historic preservation business, shall we say, the field, for 25 years, so I have some experience. I would, before I start, like to give credit to Stephanie Rouse, my predecessor, for writing this nomination. She did all of the heavy lifting, and I just get to carry it home. So thank you to her. So we're going to talk about the South Haymarket Industrial Landmark Historic District. It is roughly the area between J and M and 6th and 9th Streets. It is being landmarked as kind of a fulfillment of a recommendation that was made in the South Haymarket Neighborhood Plan. So something that was recommended, it sounds like, about 8 years ago. So this is a nice tying up of that suggestion. It is significant in the areas of community development, industry, and transportation. Its period of significance runs from around 1890 to 1946. There are 23 contributing properties and 10 non-contributing properties. The non-contributing properties are split pretty evenly between vacant lots where there used to be buildings, mostly are parking or just grass. Buildings that were built after the period of significance, so anything after 1946. And then properties that have changed so much that they don't really resemble their historic nature or appearance from the past. So I wanted to show you some maps that show change. These are Sanborn fire insurance maps. The one on the left is from 1891. They would come in and they would sketch out the footprints and the materials of all the buildings that were in a city. And then they would come back and update them so you can see how uses changed over time and you know what comes and what goes. So you can see by 1891, those railroad sidings are already going through the district. They started coming in about 1870, but they were pretty extensive already by 1891. They and more came as time passed on. You'll notice on the left in 1891 there are lots of houses in there. Which was problematic for a couple of reasons. One was a floodplain. They didn't tend to fare very well because this area flooded quite a lot up until the 1950s when there were some mitigation projects sponsored by the federal government. But also, they just weren't particularly good housing. They were convenient to work, but not to maybe for a rich life. So, by 1949, the houses are all gone, and it is pretty fully developed in terms of the lots are filled with construction, and so they've got industrial buildings and manufacturing buildings, warehouses, and that kind of thing.
Can I ask what the colors, different colors potentially?
Usually it's about materials. So I think the pink is brick. So you'll see they got more permanent over time. So the yellow is frame. I can't remember what the blue is, but I think it might be concrete block.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. There are a few properties within the district boundaries that are already designated as historic. The K Street Power Plant is listed in the National Register of Historic Places. That's the one in the middle. The Cotswold building on the left is a local landmark, and the Medical Complex is both. So they win the prize for today. So how is this area different from the Haymarket? Well, in a number of ways. So this area is the home to Lincoln's Industrial and Manufacturing District, where the Haymarket was warehouses in a jobbing district. This is where we're going to make things and store things and ship things. It developed amongst those rail sidings and became very handy for shipping of materials and of products. The rail sidings didn't really come into Haymarket, the northern part, Haymarket proper, until 1900, and it was very limited. It also developed more organically. The Haymarket, as you know, is very constricted. It's kind of landlocked between the railroad sidings and the depot. To the south, we have, of course, the district, but also the Harris Overpass. It just feels like a very stark landmark. We had a budding business district on 9th Street, and then up to the north, I think there was still more railroad. So so it had just so much land, and that was it. This could kind of keep growing and spreading out, especially as the railroad sidings kept coming. And whereas the Haymarket had hotels and restaurants, saloons, shops interspersed with the wholesale grocers mostly, or largely, this area didn't really have that. I think I've found one historic photograph where there's a cafe, probably for the workers nearby, and I bet it did a great business. But other than that, really it was just work. So I love historic photos and comparing them to the current, so I hope you don't mind. I'm going to show you a few. This is the Lincoln Paint and Color building at 825 M Street. The one on the left is from when there was a Humane Society fountain for providing water for horses and dogs. I think it's been moved into the Haymarket since, but the buildings look still very much the same. I have never known what this building was, and now that I know, it makes so much more sense. This is the Lincoln Public Service Company, so it was a power company at 841 L. And although some doors and windows have changed, it looks very much like it did when it was built.
That's so cool.
This one is likely the oldest, the oldest building in the district. It's the Western Mattress Company building. We don't have an accurate date on its construction because it predates building permits. But it has been there for quite a long time. That's the 1891 Sanborn that it's represented in, I believe. And it has survived quite a few floods. You can see the corner of it behind that rail car at the Goodrich building. So, yeah, I'm fond of it because it's a little more fancy than some others. And then the J.I. Case Thresh Company building, it has been there a good long time too. And here's another one where we've got flooding. We have a lot of great photos of flooding in the area.
Time we'd flood, they'd take a picture.
Oh yeah. Well, it's something different. You got to come down and document it. But you can tell there was a lot of water. It had a few rough years. Specifically, 1908 was particularly rough. Lost a lot of houses. That's another reason we didn't build them back there again. Lost, I think, 7 lives. A lot of damage. So the benefits of landmarking. Floodplain obviously is an issue, although much less so since 1950. The nice thing about this program is that it can alter floodplain standards for contributing properties. So if one of these buildings is contributing and they're going to undergo a renovation, they don't necessarily have to follow the floodplain requirements. If they build an addition, that addition would, but the original core building wouldn't have to. It allows for special permits for flexibility and reuse. It makes state and federal tax credits available, which can be very helpful in funding a rehabilitation, which gets more and more expensive every day. Historic districts are shown to perform better economically. They seem to draw people and new businesses, new activity in, and so we hope to see some of that there, although it seems to be pretty vibrant as it is. And then it's a way for us to protect our history. These properties would be subject to following the historic preservation design guidelines that have been passed fairly recently, or unified. We've always had design guidelines, but these are like one list people can go to that brings a lot of clarity. So those work towards trying to maintain their historic nature of those properties. And I should mention that there's been quite a bit of public outreach, mostly done by Stephanie Rouse before I came. But there have been, she attended a meeting with the Haymarket Business Association. Is that the right term? Which is as close to a neighborhood association as we're going to get with a commercial area. And they were really positive about it, enthusiastic even, I would say. And then we've sent out many letters and we've posted the usual signs. We haven't gotten a lot of calls even asking questions about it. So I feel like it's just a quiet support.
Nice.
So what questions can I answer for you?
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Back in the day, I purchased an late 1800s built property out in Walton, and I contacted Ed Zimmer about possibly getting historical significance and making it a landmark. And he said, well, he said, if you want to change a light fixture, you're going to have to apply in triplicate and wait. And so he recommended against it until we were done making any renovations. And so if these buildings are added to this historic designation, will they be restricted from changing light fixtures, for instance?
No. Well, I guess it depends on if the light fixtures are on the exterior or the interior. Okay. We really are only interested in talking to folks about what they do on the outside of a building. So if they're reconfiguring their interior spaces, redecorating, no, we don't get involved in that. If they want to change their windows or I don't know what you would need to do to some of these buildings, but exterior renovations, we would review those against the standards. And I should say, we would love to see the standards be followed every single time, but there are some exceptions for, well, it would be cost prohibitive or it would be hazardous. Sometimes you've got something that just is rife with asbestos or something like that. Who knows? So there are some circumstances in which we can't just adhere to it completely strictly. But that's also what the Historic Preservation Commission is for, so that people can bring something that would maybe a project that would fall outside of those design standards to them for their input, their recommendations and approval if they make a good case for it. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dick.
If any one of those properties wanted to expand and add on, would they then have to match what the existing building is with the expansion?
No, not necessarily. So that Cotswold building, they've put an addition on that building, and it's while it's been locally landmarked, so it's supposed to follow the same set of standards. And really the standard calls for it to not mimic the historic nature of the original, but to be compatible and sympathetic to it. So its massing is just a little bit different, and its appearance is a little bit different, but it's still kind of a nice box shape. So it's sort of submissive to the historic original.
Okay.
That's what we try to aim for.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Questions? Do you have a favorite building in that area?
You know what? I kind of fall in love with all of them eventually. If I've researched them, they're mine. I don't know if the owners know it. I love that little mattress building company because it's just got those cute little cornice details. There's another little mattress building that was more closer to a railroad siding, so it has a clipped corner to accommodate a rail siding that's no longer there, and I just love that kind of historic remnant. Kind of love them all. I don't know.
There you go. Thanks. All right, I think that's all for questions. Is there anyone here who wishes to testify in support of this application, or anyone who wishes to testify in a neutral capacity or in opposition?
I would move to close the public hearing.
Second, Joy?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Veit,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
And I would move to approve change of zone 24022.
Second, Joy?
Any discussion?
Only comment I may have is just, I appreciate the presentation, and just the gravity of this department. I mean, that's 3/4 of a century maybe, right, of those pictures, and we see boats going by buildings. So the work that this department does to make sure that not only building and economic development, but floodplain management can give us the capacity to grow is pretty fascinating. So I just appreciate the presentation and the look and what we do, so.
Additional comments or discussion? All right, Shelley.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Veit,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved 9-0.
I would just like to say to David and all of the staff, this is one of those meetings where we had a lot of administrative things today, and it, as you said, Commissioner, it's really a great example of what our community does and what this department does to both preserve the history and plan for the future in a way that is really exciting. So, at this time, if there is anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda, they may do so.
I move that we adjourn.
Second, Joy?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Ebert,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Veit,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
We are adjourned.